The sky over New Mexico's arid desert shimmered with the gentle pulse of anti-grav engines as the Corellian Accord's flagship, Sanctum of Harmony, descended onto the tarmac of the Interstellar Ecological Summit base. Dust spiraled in lazy corkscrews around the landing pads, swirling past rows of flags flapping awkwardly in the thermal gusts. Behind the barriers, cameras hovered mid-air like curious hummingbirds, each drone feeding live footage to a public eager to see what Earth's debut into galactic ecological discourse would bring. Samuel Ridge leaned on the reinforced railing of the observation deck, squinting up at the descending cruiser. At 54, he still had the hard-set jaw and squared shoulders of his Marine days, though time and animal tranquilizers had taken some toll. These days, he was the director of operations at Ridge Wildlife Research Center, his privately funded haven for big cats, rescue cases, and one particularly unpredictable genetic wildcard. "You're squinting like a man who already regrets his involvement," murmured Dr. Lacey Moore, stepping beside him. Her lab coat flared in the wind, betraying the fact that no one had designed attire for alien diplomacy in desert climates. "I'm squinting like a man who has a 700-pound behavioral anomaly in quarantine," Sam muttered, "and now I'm being asked to parade him around because a glorified space gecko called our apex predators plush toys." Lacey snorted. "They're not geckos, they're Varnathi. Amphibio-reptilian, I think." "Still smug," he replied. The ramp of the Corellian vessel lowered with a faint hum. One by one, representatives from member species glided or stalked or squelched their way down the gleaming path. There were Daxari, gangly quadrupeds with ocular fans instead of heads, tall, eel-skinned Frelvanti that wore translation orbs like necklaces. And finally, the delegation's chief biologist, Dr. Goru of Varnath, 6 feet tall, sinewy, and unmistakably arrogant, even without his translator unit chirping. He paused at the bottom of the ramp, turned toward the press drones, and raised both webbed hands. "People of Earth," Goru began, "we are honored to review the biotic exhibits of your planet. We look forward to encountering what you consider apex life forms." The pause after apex was a deliberate wound, like salt, pressed into the air. The summit began inside the biodome, a massive, climate-controlled structure housing holographic ecosystems. Earth's delegation had prepared meticulously, documentaries of snow leopards leaping across icy ridges, time-lapsed footage of wolves coordinating a hunt, and a 3D immersion reel featuring great white sharks in full breach. The Corellians watched, and snickered. "They're elegant," said one Frelvanti, "but minor. Their jaws are underpowered for their body mass." "A bear?" another asked, tapping at a virtual screen. "This creature hibernates to avoid competition? How is this apex behavior?" Even the elephants, proud titans of savanna and forest, were dismissed. Dr. Goru didn't laugh, he dissected. On a broadcasted panel discussion streamed worldwide, he offered his thoughts with scalpel-like precision. "You mistake nostalgia for danger," he said. "Your creatures are impressive only to you. On Marzil, the dominant land predator is a translucent, 6-limbed cephalopod that uses sonar to liquefy bone before feeding. On Varnath, apex status is reserved for bioluminescent apexoids that prey upon their own shadows. Compared to that, lions are decorative, tigers, plush ceremonial fighters. You speak of alpha predators as if the term is not biologically meaningless." Sam, who had been watching from the side of the stage, bristled. He'd spent years with broken ribs, torn shoulders, and the kind of scars only a bottle-fed apex hybrid could give a man. He stepped forward, voice low. "We've got one creature left we didn't show you. Not in your database. It's not in any ecosystem, because we made it. You want apex? We'll show you apex. Just be ready for the smell of ammonia and regret." 48 hours later, the Ridge Wildlife Research Center was locked down like Fort Knox during a power surge. The guests arrived by armored transport, guided through double-gated corridors lined with reinforced observation panels. Sam walked beside the group, gesturing toward enclosures where tigers sunned themselves and wolves dozed in patches of dusty light. The Corellians barely looked. "I assume your final exhibit is the subject of much local pride," Goru said. "Will we be amused?" "You'll be careful," Sam replied. "That thing's not built to entertain." Lacey had already moved ahead, entering the observation booth that overlooked enclosure 7X. Behind the triple-layered glass stood a reinforced paddock with automated tranquilizer ports and 2 mobile safety barriers. The airlock gate at the back hissed, and a steel crate was eased into place by hydraulic arms. Inside, something massive stirred. The aliens leaned in. "What is this creature's taxonomy?" asked a Daxari scientist. "It doesn't have one," Lacey said. "It's a hybrid. Panthera leo crossed with Panthera tigris. We call it a Liger." A low growl rolled out from the crate. "It's not natural," Goru said, unimpressed. "Hybridization is a primitive form of genetic play." "Sure," Sam said. "Until you realize it weighs over 900 pounds, has 0 socialization skills, an unstable temperament, and enough bite force to snap steel mesh." The crate opened, and out it stepped. The Liger's coat was pale gold, striped with dusty orange, its bulk unreal even in person. It was muscle-bound, heavy-boned, with paws like dinner plates and a stare that held no affection for anything present. The aliens went quiet. For a moment. Then Goru said, "It appears lethargic, overfed. This is your apex? A fluffed beef loaf?" Lacey's head snapped around. "It's tranquilized to reduce aggression. You're lucky." That's when the scent hit it. No one knew if it was the sulfuric tang of Goru's skin oils or the subtle electromagnetic field the Varnathi emitted when they were smug. But the Liger's nose twitched, its pupils dilated, its body coiled, and it lunged. The impact was like a battering ram hitting a concrete wall. The inner mesh of the enclosure flexed, then gave. One bolt flew loose, then another. Sirens shrieked. "Breach in 7X, someone yelled. The Liger barreled forward, smashing through the secondary barrier like it was kindling. Staff dove for cover. Drones launched. Tranquilizer teams mobilized. Sam's breath caught. "Lock it down. Now." The Kiralians scattered, uncertain which way was safety. The last thing Goru said before being knocked flat by a toppling observation bench was, "I believe this may qualify as Apex." A security siren wailed across the Ridge Wildlife Research Center, its piercing tone sweeping through the desert air like a war horn. Inside the facility, lights strobed red. Thick steel doors slammed shut on automated rails. Liger containment breach. This wasn't a drill. It wasn't even the worst-case scenario, it was worse. The Liger had cleared the enclosure perimeter and torn through the feeding corridor with terrifying speed, its massive paws slamming into floor panels hard enough to leave dents. Each breath was a snort of fury. Tranquilizer darts hissed through the air and bounced harmlessly off its flank, the initial doses failing to penetrate deep enough through its unusually thick dermis. Sam sprinted into the crisis control bay, shoving past a technician in a flak vest. "Who's on the primary sedative gun?" he shouted. "Doyle's team is up front, but the darts aren't working. Skin deflection." Lacey's voice came through the comms with an edge of panic. "It's heading east toward the climate-controlled corridor." "Not the primate wing?" Sam muttered. "Not today." The Kirelian delegation had been herded into the reinforced viewing lounge, except for Goru, who was now being dragged by 2 staffers through a service hatch, bleeding slightly from a gash above his brow, where the observation bench had clipped him. He didn't complain, he just blinked, stunned, silent. "Did that animal attempt a tactical escape?" murmured a Daxari scientist, watching from behind thick polymer glass. "It's not tactical," Lacey said grimly, panting as she adjusted a tranquilizer rifle on the observation catwalk. "It's enraged, overstimulated, and probably has adrenaline flooding its bloodstream like battery acid. Stay put." Down in the corridor, the Liger pivoted hard, its haunches skidding as it crashed into a storage bay door. A half-ton steel panel dented inward. Another swipe. Hinges groaned. "Door breach in 5, someone said. 4. The panel popped off its top rail and clanged to the floor. The Liger disappeared into the shadows. Sam charged down the secondary hallway with a tranq rifle slung across his chest and a tranquilizer pistol holstered at his hip. His heart was pounding harder than it had since Kandahar. Around him, the emergency response crew moved in practiced chaos, rerouting animal enclosures, locking electronic gates, and feeding GPS data from motion sensors directly into Sam's handheld display. "Liger's in Sector 3, said a tech over the comms, moving through maintenance access. "How the hell did it fit?" "Scraped half its side getting in. It's bleeding." Sam grimaced. Not good. Bleeding meant pain, and pain made the Liger even more reactive. Behind him, Lacey jogged up, slightly winded, carrying 2 fresh tranquilizer cartridges. "Triple dose," she said. "No more half measures. Vitals?" "Still elevated. 178 BPM. Breathing shallow." They turned a corner and froze. The beast was 20 feet ahead, prowling through a dim hallway lit by flickering emergency lights. Its left flank was streaked with blood, superficial but messy. Its breath steamed in the cold air, plume after plume, like an engine gone rogue. Then it saw them. Lacey aimed first. Sam followed. 2 darts launched. One struck the shoulder and stuck. The other hit a foreleg but bounced off. The Liger roared, a deafening guttural blast that seemed to make the air shudder. It lunged. Sam dove right. Lacey fell back into a supply alcove. The Liger charged past them both, claws raking the floor as it powered through the corridor and crashed through a service door into the backup generator room. "Contain it," Lacey gasped, "before it hits the fuel lines." Back in the viewing lounge, the Corellians were in varying stages of disbelief and existential re-evaluation. One of the Frelvanti was pacing in tight circles. The Daxari had begun broadcasting chemical distress signals, misting the air with a scent that smelled faintly of overripe melon. Goruu, forehead bandaged, sat hunched over a datapad reviewing footage from the breach. "It evaded targeted sedation," he murmured. "It altered its path based on active pursuit pressure. It learns in real time." "It has no sonar," said the Daxari, trembling. "It doesn't need it," Goruu replied. "It has rage. And trauma, and apparently joint pain." A nurse patched a mild laceration on his arm. "This is going to trigger an interspecies incident," she warned. "I know," he replied, watching a slowed frame of the Liger smashing a barrier with a single strike. "But first, I need to understand why these creatures are even allowed to exist." Sam and Lacey emerged from the side hallway into the generator bay, rifles raised. The Liger was there, panting heavily, tail twitching in agitation. 1 dart dangled from its shoulder, and a fresh one from its hind leg. The beast's movements were sluggish now. The sedatives were working, slowly. "Let it see you," Lacey whispered. "You raised it. Maybe it'll pause." Sam stepped forward, calm, hand lowered. "Easy, boy," he said, voice low and steady. "You remember me. You know my voice." The Liger's ears flicked. It turned its massive head towards Sam. For a moment, the room seemed to stop breathing. Then the animal swayed half from exhaustion, half from chemicals and slumped onto its side, exhaling like a deflating furnace. Sam rushed in, keeping his rifle up until he was sure. Lacey followed, kneeling beside the flank. Heart rate dropping. Respiration shallow, but stable. No collapse. "It's going down clean." Sam wiped his brow with the back of his hand. His shirt was soaked through. He glanced at the beast, its ribs rising and falling in ponderous rhythm. "Let's not do that again," he muttered. An hour later, the facility's lockdown was lifted. The Liger was back in a double-reinforced medical enclosure, sedated, monitored, and breathing without distress. The bleeding had stopped. A veterinary team began treatment. Wound cleaning, blood work, IV fluids. They'd run imaging scans later, once the beast was fully stabilized. In the conference debrief, no one laughed. The Corellian team sat stiffly, reviewing containment protocols and medical logs. The official tone was polite, their eyes, less so. "We note that Earth species demonstrate hybridized behavioral volatility, not catalogued in standard galactic fauna matrices," Goruu said. "This specimen cannot exist in the wild." "It doesn't," Sam replied. "Never has, never will." "Then why make it?" Sam hesitated. "We didn't make it on purpose. It was an accident. Zoos, breeding overlap. But we didn't stop it either." The Frelvanti leaned forward. "You tolerated the emergence of something inherently unstable, then built a facility to house it?" "We had to," Lacey said. "Once it existed, we had a responsibility." The Daxari sniffed. Responsibility or curiosity? Goruu raised a hand, silencing further commentary. "It is clear," he said finally, "that Earth's concept of apex is not based solely on predatory ability. It is rooted in resilience, adaptation, and an unsettling willingness to allow chaos to live, just to see what happens." Sam nodded. "You're not wrong." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Goruu spoke again, quieter this time. I will file a full incident report. Injury was minor. I will not recommend sanctions. Sam relaxed slightly. But we will not be requesting another live demonstration. That's mutual, Lacey muttered. Later that night, long after the Corellians had returned to their shuttle, and the cleanup crews had finished scrubbing claw marks from the floor tiles, Goru sat alone in his cabin aboard the Sanctum of Harmony. A hollow display hovered before him, looping the same clip over and over. The Liger, mid-charge, then slowing, then stopping as Sam stepped forward, voice calm. It didn't run. It didn't fight. It just listened. They made that, Goru whispered, on purpose. He hit play again. By sunrise the next morning, the Ridge Wildlife Research Center smelled like antiseptic and scorched steel. The air still hung heavy with tension, though the immediate danger had passed. Staff walked in weary silence through corridors with fresh dents and hastily patched panels. The Liger remained sedated, breathing steadily under full medical observation. Sam stood just outside the veterinary suite, leaning against the doorframe with a cup of black coffee and a half-read sedative report in his hand. The creature had sustained only minor lacerations and a low-grade muscular strain during its outburst, better than expected, all things considered. The staff hadn't fared quite as well. One tranquilizer tech had a dislocated shoulder after diving behind a barrier too late. Another sprained an ankle during the scramble in Sector 3. And a visiting intern, of all people, had ended up with a mild concussion from a falling control panel. All recoverable. But the paperwork was already a nightmare. And then there was Goru. The Varnathi biologist, freshly bandaged, currently sat in the temporary incident triage tent, filling out an interstellar injury liability form that spanned 16 digital pages and had to be signed by law by at least 3 different species, with Federation standard clearance. Sam stepped in quietly. "You're on page 9, he said. Goru didn't look up. 9 was 20 minutes ago. I am now on page 12, reviewing the section on emotional compensation eligibility. It asks me to rate my psychological distress on a numerical scale using metaphor." Sam raised an eyebrow. "How's that going?" "I've narrowed it down to the weight of a collapsing sun or being pursued by a feverish bear holding a plasma cutter." Sam couldn't help but chuckle. "Go with the bear." Goru set the tablet down and finally looked up. "You understand," he said slowly, "that I did not come here seeking to be impressed by your fauna. The Corellian Accord considers Earth a developing ecological society. A test case. Believe me, we noticed. But that creature, your Liger, it is not a natural predator. It is a product of unregulated hybridization. It is socially unstable, biologically overgrown, and entirely reliant on sedation to function in captivity." Sam nodded. "You're not wrong. And yet," Goru continued, "your species kept it alive, fed it, studied it, built a structure strong enough to almost contain it. And then, when it escaped, you followed it, without hesitation." Sam's face tightened. "Because if we didn't, someone else would have gotten hurt." Goru folded his hands. "There is no biological logic to your decision to pursue a wounded apex hybrid on foot." "No," Sam agreed. "There was just responsibility." Goru looked away. Sam let him sit with that for a while. In the central administration suite, Lacey sat surrounded by screens, some showing camera footage, others listing incident reports, dosage logs, and species-specific trauma charts. A Federation legal observer, a thin, expressionless creature with metallic skin and no mouth, stood behind her, occasionally blinking a camera lens where a face might have been. "You're going to ask if we provoked the animal," she said, before the thing could pulse another bureaucratic query. "No, we didn't. It was tranquilized to standard levels. It broke out because of sensory overstimulation, most likely scent-based." The observer pulsed again, slowly. "And yes, the alien scent profiles were provided to us beforehand, but nothing in their chemical makeup predicted an aggressive trigger. This is uncharted territory. You want blame? Blame your own curiosity." The observer blinked once, uploaded her statement to its server, and silently glided out. She leaned back in her chair, exhausted. "They always come to observe," she muttered, "never to learn." Meanwhile, the Liger was beginning to stir. The veterinary team had dialed down the sedation carefully, stage by stage, monitoring every heartbeat and reflex twitch. The beast shifted groggily, one paw dragging through the hay-strewn floor of the reinforced enclosure. Sam stood on the other side of the thick glass, arms folded, watching intently. Dr. Rami, the center's lead veterinarian, approached slowly. Vitals are steady. Muscle tone's good. No signs of cardiovascular distress. Sam nodded. What about the scans? Just got the results. Compression bruising along the left flank and some early-stage joint stress. Pretty typical for a feline that size. But we also found something else. She handed Sam a tablet. He squinted at the scan overlay. Is that bone growth? Yep. Denser than average. Its skeleton is compacting under its own weight, adapting in slow increments. This thing is evolving into a biomechanical tank. Sam let out a low whistle. So we didn't just raise a monster. We built a walking accident waiting to happen. Dr. Rami shrugged. Or a miracle, depending on your perspective. He wasn't sure which scared him more. Later that afternoon, the Karelian delegation gathered in the central auditorium, this time not for a presentation, but for a formal diplomatic resolution. Human representatives sat stiffly across from them, posture tight, expressions wary. Federation legal officials oversaw the proceeding via hologram. The Karelian Accord recognizes that yesterday's event was a deviation from standard interspecies protocol, began a Frelvanti official. We acknowledge the unintentional nature of the injury sustained by Dr. Goru. Sam glanced toward Goru, who looked half-interested at best, still reviewing biological notes. However, the official continued, we must classify the Liger encounter as a Tier 4 incident under the Interplanetary Wildlife Containment Act, which means you are subject to review. A full genetic profile must be submitted, psychological history, and, in accordance with Article 39, a rationale for this creature's existence. Lacey spoke up. We don't have a clean rationale, we have a fact. The Liger exists. It shouldn't, but it does. We didn't design it, but we are responsible for it. Like you would be if one of your apex creatures suddenly appeared on another planet and needed help. Goru shifted in his seat. Slowly, almost reluctantly, he spoke. They didn't just make the Liger, they adapted to it, fed it, controlled it, learned from it. It's human, in a way. The room fell quiet. Sam blinked. The Daxari turned, intrigued. Explain. Goru paused. It is unstable, overbuilt, simultaneously magnificent and impractical, dangerous when provoked, mysterious when calm. Their species tolerates it because they see some part of themselves in it. Sam almost laughed. You're not wrong. The Karelians deliberated for several minutes in murmured native frequencies, their conversation just outside human comprehension. Finally, they turned back. The Liger is hereby classified as a bioengineered chaos variable. It is not to be reproduced, traded, or demonstrated without express consent of the Accord, but Earth may keep it under supervision. Sam leaned back in his chair, exhaling. That's the best outcome we've had all week. Lacey raised an eyebrow. We're being babysat by space diplomats, and you're relieved? I'm relieved because we still have a Liger, and nobody died. That night, Sam returned to the enclosure one last time. The Liger was awake, drowsy, but aware, its eyes tracking him across the room. Sam sat down outside the glass, resting his arms on his knees. I know you didn't mean to scare everyone, he said softly, but you did. The Liger blinked once. You've got power, yeah, but that power doesn't make you Apex. What makes you Apex is surviving even when you shouldn't, and maybe not turning it into a disaster. The beast exhaled, a long, slow breath, and settled its head onto its paws. Sam reached out, placing a palm gently against the glass. The Liger didn't move. But it didn't growl either. He smiled. See you tomorrow, buddy. 2 weeks later, the Ridge Wildlife Research Center had finally stopped smelling like melted security panels and singed fur. Most of the damage was repaired. New anti-breach barriers had been installed around Enclosure 7X, equipped with dynamic magnetic locking and reinforced carbon mesh walls rated for 2 metric tons of brute force. Sam insisted on every upgrade. The Karelian auditors, though no longer present, had already uploaded their risk assessment 20 pages long, mostly in subcoded galactic bureaucratese, but the summary was unmistakable. Containment sufficient, human unpredictability noted. Inside Enclosure 7X, the Liger slept under infrared lighting, sedated only enough to curb overstimulation, but fully conscious and aware. It had remained calmer since the breach, perhaps from exhaustion. Or, perhaps because it recognized, at last, that no one was trying to cage it out of fear, but out of necessity. Sam stood in the medical annex with Dr. Rami, reviewing the Liger's latest scans. "Bone density's plateauing," she said, tapping through cross-sections on a holographic display. "No signs of worsening stress fractures. We've adjusted its feeding protocols, less protein, more omega-3, might help the joints." "And the behavior?" "Better. No pacing, no vocalizing at night. It's begun responding to familiar handlers again." Sam nodded, his arms folded across his chest. "He's learning we're not the enemy." Rami glanced at him. "And what about the Accord? Still planning to send those biosurvey drones?" "Yeah, next week. They want baseline data on every large predator we house. Bears, wolves, jaguars, everything." "You think they're looking for another Liger?" Sam shook his head. "They're looking for a pattern, but they won't find one." "Why not?" "Because this wasn't a pattern, it was a one-time mess, and somehow we rose to meet it." At the United Nations Biodiversity Annex in Geneva, a new exhibit was being assembled, a sleek, glass-encased hollow display titled Human-Engineered Apex Interventions. It showcased key moments from the Liger incident, reconstructed in crisp 3D, highlighting tranquilizer deployment, breach trajectories, and biometric scans of the creature's skeletal evolution. It wasn't a warning, it wasn't a brag. It was an admission that humans had built something unnatural, that they hadn't backed away from it, that they had met danger not with destruction, but with stewardship. It was a strange exhibit. It made people uncomfortable. It also made them think. Back at Ridge, the center had returned to routine. The other animals had adapted quickly to the repairs, though the macaques in the south wing still shrieked any time they heard the door locks hiss. Sam's daily rounds felt normal again. Feed the tigers, check on the wolf pack, review the security logs, refill the camel feed tanks. He almost forgot about the Corellians until a package arrived by courier drone. No name, no address, just a sealed datapad and a note. "Further study pending. Request for continued observation approved. Personal footage enclosed. Dr. Goru." Sam tapped the screen. The video opened on Goru's face, slightly awkward in frame, clearly recorded in private. Behind him, the sterile interior of the Sanctum of Harmony. "I have spent the last 10 days reviewing the incident from every possible angle, frame by frame, biometric data, behavioral cues, human response patterns." He paused. "I still do not understand how you let something like this live." He paused again, longer this time. "But I think I understand why you didn't kill it." The video cut to footage of the Liger in recovery, of Sam, hand against the glass, of the beast, blinking slowly, then resting its head on its paws in quiet understanding. Goru's voice returned. "You were not showing off your power. You were showing us your burden. You did not invent this predator for war. You inherited it, and chose to carry it anyway." The message ended. Sam stood in silence. Then he tucked the datapad into his back pocket and headed out toward the enclosure. The last of the Corellian observers, an amphibious archivist named Jarek, stood at the viewing gallery, recording post-visit impressions. "They never intended for the hybrid to symbolize anything," Jarek said aloud, speaking to its floating transcription orb. "But unintentionally or not, it now represents something unique. Earth's predators do not dominate their world through brute strength alone. Their ecosystem is navigated through struggle, resilience, and human intervention." Jarek tilted its head, watching as Sam walked across the enclosure threshold, stopping just short of the reinforced glass. The Liger rose slowly, huge muscles rippling beneath its striped coat. Sam sat down, just as he always did, arms resting on his knees. "Not gonna lie," he said to the creature. "I didn't think you'd live through this week. Thought we'd lose you to a muscle tear, a fractured spine, some bureaucrat's clipboard." The Liger blinked. "But here you are, breathing, calm, a little bit of chaos wrapped in a lot of meat." It snorted, a quiet exhale. Sam smiled. "They think we made you for glory, but you're not here to impress anyone." A pause. "You're here because you happened, and because we don't run from the things we make. Not anymore." The Liger lay down again, head resting near the glass. Sam placed a hand gently against the panel. Inside, the Liger's eyes followed him. Not with hunger. Not with fear. With recognition. The Accord wouldn't come back. Not for another demonstration. Not for another lesson. They had all the data they needed and more questions than they wanted. In their official report, Earth's predators were assigned a new designation: Biological Sovereignty Class, Apex Variable. No more debates, no more mockery. Earth's beasts weren't the strongest in the galaxy. They were simply theirs. And that was more than enough.